Oftentimes when we look back at the late years of the 2000s, we think about the glory days of the Xbox 360, when games like Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, Halo 3, and Grand Theft Auto 4 fought for the attention of gamers. Yet somehow, someway, out of the blue on August 28th, 2008, Castle Crashers was released and single-handedly changed the marketplace for indie games forever. But how does this hit game hold up 10 years later? Is it still fun to play? Is it still active? My name's Elijah, and today on Rocket Sloth we are taking a look at Castle Crashers 10 years later. Let's get into it. Before we can jump into Castle Crashers and the success that it was, we have to understand where Castle Crashers came from, and we need to understand the background of the development company, the Behemoth. Back in the days before YouTube, 2002, Newgrounds was a very popular site where people would upload user-generated content such as Flash shows and Flash video games. During this time, Tom Fulp and Dan Paladin worked together to create a short little Flash game called Alien Hominid. With the huge popularity of the game on Newgrounds and a few opportunities to possibly bring the game to a console, this soon led to the development and the beginning of what would become the Behemoth. After Alien Hominid was released to critical acclaim on consoles, the Behemoth bunkered down and began to work on a new game. The game was first shown off in mid-2005 at San Diego Comic-Con, and it was under the title Ye Old Side Scroller. The title was ambiguous enough and obviously not the final name they chose, but it worked for what they were trying to demo, and the fact that the Behemoth already had a reputation reviving older styles of games, which, mind you, wasn't a marketplace during this time in indie games, it helped excite some fans of the studio. Interestingly enough, the demo that they showed off at that Comic-Con was on a Nintendo GameCube, which to this day is a family of systems that Castle Crashers has never been on. But just a few years later, on August 27th, 2008, Castle Crashers was released onto the Xbox Arcade Store. And for once, people were distracted from the high-octane AAA titles that they were playing to play something a little more lighthearted and really fun. Castle Crashers took on the side-scrolling beat-em-up type games that we were all familiar with from the Super Nintendo days, and implemented basic RPG elements that made every action and each mission that you complete really fun. The game initially lets you play as one of 4 different characters, and what was really cool was that this game supported up to 4-player multiplayer co-op either locally or online, which outside of games like Left 4 Dead and Halo 3 wasn't a super common practice. And since this was an indie arcade title, it meant that the game was a lot lower in price than the regular $60 games, which made the game more accessible to people looking for a fun game to play on a budget. There was also the individuality of having your own character. Since 2 players can't play as the same character at the same time, it really allowed for everyone to kind of take on their own role and figure out what type of character they wanted their person to be. No 2 characters play the same, which is a really unique idea. And of course there's other RPG games that have similar ideas of making your own character, but what worked with Castle Crashers was the high-octane gameplay and the low-key humor that was just constantly put throughout the entire game. The premise of the game is really simple. The knights are at a festival, and all of a sudden some drunk maybe, wizard comes by and kidnaps the 4 princesses and steals a magical gem. And just like that, it's up to our heroes, the Castle Crashers, I don't think that's their actual name, but I like it, to go and save the day. And just like that, you're off to the game in this beat-em-up style that never seems to get too stale because you're always unlocking something new for your character, or the game's throwing something at you that's unexpected, or breaks up the monotony by putting some comedic element in it. I really love the overall setting that each stage has. No 2 worlds feel the same, and each time you're playing, you're somewhere different, and that's great. The art direction is fantastic and beautiful and cartoony and funny all at the same time, and it just works. It never feels like you're playing a cheap, poorly made game. After fighting your way through hordes of enemies, eventually you're faced with a boss fight, and they're challenging and fun at the same time, and you sometimes have to coordinate with your team on how you're going to defeat the boss, and teamwork really is essential to this game. But at the same time, the game developers would throw curveballs here and there where after you defeat a boss and you're ready to save one of the princesses, all 4 players must duke it out against each other to decide who's going to be the person that gets to actually save the princess. And it's kind of funny. I like that. I also think it's really funny that one of the princess never has her face shown, whether she's being dragged around or there's always just something in her face, which is just a funny concept. The music's really fitting here too, and I don't really know what and how to explain why I like it, but it just feels very fitting for the medieval time period, but also very intense and epic, and I appreciate that. There's also a very large cast of characters that players can choose between, and more DLC characters that were later added on, which adds for a lot of replayability, especially because you can level up and learn new powers as each character. It's a real shame there hadn't been any story DLC to add on, because at the end of the day you are going to be replaying through the same levels over and over again, but it's definitely fun to play through a couple of times, especially if you're playing with different groups of people each time. I do have to say it is disappointing that a lot of the characters are not necessarily equal. Some characters are clearly much better than others. Like for instance, the blue Castle Crasher of the main 4 is way stronger than the red and orange, and the green Castle Crasher is way weaker. So you kind of have to take that with what you will. Of course, you can play through the game and still get stuff done as any of the characters, but definitely it's kind of a shame that fans of the game had to come up with their own tiering system based off of which character in Castle Crashers is better than the others. Like for instance, the character Hattie Haddington, which is either unlocked by getting an achievement or buying a certain version of the game or paying $1.99 on the PS3, is by far the worst character in the game. It is just impossible to really do much with that character, and it's kind of weird how there's just a lot of these unlockable characters are just awful, and then some characters you think would be really bad end up being the most powerful character ever. As you guys can see, I'm nitpicking here, trying to find something wrong when there's over 20 characters in a game. I gotta call something out. I do like that there's a lot of different pets you can have in the game that follow you around and help you. They have various different abilities that definitely you need to kind of pay attention to. For instance, the bipolar bear, any character that has less than 11 HP will be mauled to death. So, you can even get killed by your own pet, so be careful. But actually, a lot of the pets are really cool and really helpful too, and I think it's just an extra cool element and something to think about when you're playing through the game, and I really appreciate that. Sure, the hit detection can be a little bit off at times just because of the two-dimensional plane, but collecting gold's really fun, and collecting and finding different weapons and buying potions and whatnot is a cool extra level to the meta, and I can get behind it. It just gives a little bit more purpose to each area besides just hacking and slashing, and with each additional layer this game gives, you get a better experience overall. There's a versus mode in the game that I never really was too fond of, and I don't think I've played it more than just a little bit, even though I have a lot of friends who play Castle Crashers. And about 3 years ago, they released a remastered version of the game. If you own the 360 version, it's only a $5 upgrade. Otherwise, it's actually not that bad of a remaster. I mean, it's a 2D cartoon game, so it's hard to really change too much, but I have to say the frame rate's a lot better. The hit detection, still but they just made a lot of general refinements that I really appreciate. When you're switching between characters, you don't have to really do as much grinding to get weapons back and things that you've already done the first time you've played through the game. I do need to iterate that this game is definitely better played with other people, whether you're playing the old or the new version of this game, because if you die, you'll get downed and your teammate can come and help you. But if you're playing by yourself and you die, you have to do the whole level over again, which is not fun if you're almost done with the level. Matchmaking does exist in this game, but with the game being a couple years old on the remastered side of things, you might have some trouble finding some people to play with. You probably won't find a full team right away, depending on what time of the day you're on and when you're playing and where you're playing. So I'd recommend maybe having a friend come over or planning it out with a friend to buy it together or whatever. I know Steam does sell group packs, so if you want to just be cool and buy a pack for your friends, you can do that too. So just make sure you're playing it with someone else, or else it's gonna get unnecessarily grindy and tedious having to go back and redo what you've already completed if you die. But I have to say, 10 years later, this game holds up amazingly well. It's a fun adventure, the gameplay is genuinely fun, the artwork is fantastic, and there's just so much life and comedy behind this game that I just can't help to think that this is going to be one of those games that everyone remembers for a long time, which is cool because this and games like Super Meat Boy were kind of the resurgence of the retro style of games making a comeback, and it paved the way for newer games in the same type of style to make their way too. The Behemoth did go on to make a couple more games such as Battle Block Theater and Lovers in a Dangerous Space-Time. I think they have one more game, it's more of like a strategy game, and all the games have their own charm and they're fun and they bring out very unique ideas, but at the end of the day, nothing beats a good game of Castle Crashers.
Hey guys, Luke here real quick. While I was editing this, I noticed there was no official rating given to this game by Elijah. So I'm gonna just go ahead and give the game an 8 out of 10 all across the board on Xbox and Steam. It's fun, that's all I have to say.
Hey, if you like this video, consider subscribing, cause I make videos here. We do. We've been doing it for a while. That's all. If you guys like the video, make sure to subscribe, hit the like button, leave a comment down below with what video you'd like me to check out next, preferably if it's from the years 2005 through 2012. I'm just feeling nostalgia for that time. I want to do something like that. Check out our Patreon, www.rocketsloth.net. You can show some support. You can throw a dollar bill at me, and I will happily take it and invest it in Bitcoin. No, you know what? Let's invest it in Dogecoin. So that's our video, guys. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to check back because we make new videos every couple days, and we'll see you guys soon with a brand new video.